Shalom, it's the 20th of May. Just want to share a few thoughts. Just preparing for Friday. And just an overview on the James chapter 4. So, in general, it is very confronting, the topics that James brought up. On a personal level, if you read the book of John, it talks about being friends with the world, enemies with Yahweh, same topic and theme of what James is talking about. James is also talking about desires, worldly desires versus Yahweh's desires. The word of Yahweh, which is described as the river of Elohim. We also discussed, I went through the idea of thorns and how every action that you do is a seed that you sow. And sometimes, if that seed is not from Yahweh, it will normally come from a place of desire, because we naturally do things that we desire, that I want to do. And all my actions and all my words are basically seeds that I sow. And it will bear fruit, but the fruit or the plant or the produce of that is in Isaiah 10, talks about the reaping iniquity, so reaping destruction. And it's also compared to thorns. And thorns are basically covering the ground, and it smothers and kills off any other plants. So Matthew talks about the parable of the sower, and how Yahweh's word can be choked by these thorns, which are the desires of the heart, the seeds that fell into the ground of your life. And now it's even covering your altar, your place of worship, your personal relationship with Yahweh. So James also talk about evil speech, speaking against a brother, judgment of a brother, judging the Torah, and that's also part of the wrong seeds that you sow, and how that can bring judgment upon you. And it's very important to get everything in context, and understanding that these things are very important on a personal level, on a daily level. We need to assess our lives. Think back on yesterday, the words you spoke. Did I say anything against anybody? Did I say anything negative against anybody? Did I belittle anybody? Maybe unintentionally, just dropping something that caused a perception of that person with someone else. Or did I do something from my own desire, making my own plans, relying on my own strengths? So James basically bring the reality of your life to the forefront, and you have to face it. And every single aspect of your life is in front of you, and you have to, interact with it. You have to face it. And for me personally, that just bring things to mind. We fall into habits. Sometimes it's a good habit where I naturally don't do things wrong, but I can then tend to do something from my own strength, because it's a habit that I formed, doing the right thing over and over and over again. But then you can also end up not doing it with the heart, and that's also mechanical, which I don't want. So we need to be actively present when we live our lives in the framework and the guidelines of Yahweh's word and what He wants. And just interacting with the world, being friends with the world. Yes, we can interact with worldly people, but we should never be influenced by them in a negative way. But it's so difficult nowadays with the media, with entertainment, where we are bombarded and programmed with all these messages. And collectively, people accept that now as the norm. certain lifestyles are now not even being questioned. And how can we dare to question that? There's a situation of Christian people I know who are friends with someone who call themselves a brother, but their lifestyle is wrong. Not to say that I'm perfect, don't want to highlight that, but your imperfection you should not embrace. You should war against it, like Paul said. You need to stand up against those things that you recognize as contrary to Yahweh's will, contrary to Yahweh's word and his character, so that we can conform to that. Because our pure religion, our intent of everything we do on a spiritual level is about holiness, is about the purification process, is about elevating the fallen soul to a higher level so that we can stand in the presence of the Father, going back to the original things, the origin, which is a relationship with the Father, the originator. So always think about your motives, even if it's of spiritual nature, religious nature, good intention. You might have something subtle that can slowly over time twist it into something that is not right, where your motive can be self-elevation, false sense of holiness, and to be perceived as someone that you are not. Now, if you think about it, if people can see you how you really are in your normal life when no one's looking, is that different to you interacting with people? Is that different to interacting with yourself or by yourself? And that's the true test of whether you have this false pretense, this pretend life that I'm living out there versus the real me. Now, every one of us is guilty in that regard. We all put our best foot forward when we deal with people, especially with spiritual, religious people. We try to live modest. We try to do the right thing and not sin because we don't want to be judged, or we don't want to be perceived as, a sinner or just normal human. And we all have that, so we need to close that gap. So those are a few thoughts that I thought about just reading through the presentation again. So I hope that helped you today, and have a good day. Shalom.